The first reading I will be analyzing is called Post-War and Race in American Cities by Keegan. So, after World War II, the economic expansion, because of the GI Bill, increased homeownership, financial security, and individual family wealth as white people moved to the suburbs to develop urban renewal. Prosperity was only for the privileged. The underprivileged could not send their children to college. They were unable to move to the suburbs because they were not trusted with loans, and they were forced out of their homes into isolated pockets in the cities. This developed major poverty and involuntary segregation. The parameters were race. Jim Crow segregation was in the South, and in the North, housing codes and federal oversight, voting, and urban renewal was a part of it. No loans were given, of course, by the FHA to the neighborhoods, which prevented moving to the suburbs, which was a way of still being racist, but not officially showing that you were racist. After the war, there was many civil rights, women's, and gay rights movements, which provided equal opportunity and fairness as a thought process. This provides political correctness today, but it still shows that racial discrimination is still here based on the facts that happened recently. After the city schools were integrated and whites decamped to American cities, or out of American cities, the suburbs, they brought with them property values, tax revenues, and political capital, sports teams, shopping districts, and cultural attractions. This left the cities in poverty and made the cities a place that people wouldn't want to be. Now, when you deny someone of their social contract or rule of law, it's hard to imagine that they would want to follow the rules that they're denied of in general. So the city became kind of a cultural urban jungle, they would call it, and they would predispose these people of color to be violent and angry and say that was just their nature, but it's not just their nature. It's a lot of times it is because of the circumstances they're put in. If you treat someone like this, how would you expect them to react? So after the crack wars in the 1880s and 1990s, the urban word meant race and deprivation. Now the urban word means chic and edgy. This is called the real world. The cities turned into a huge popularity with advertising industry on Madison Avenue, the corporate America. After it became popular to move back into the cities, it showed that once a lot of white people moved back in, they were still racist, and they still decided to act as if the colored community was dangerous, and they forced a lot of people into jail that were most likely innocent, and higher education turned into a lot more law enforcement and drug interdiction. It just shows that racism was still alive in the cities, even though they kind of tried to act as if they accepted more people. The next reading I will be analyzing is Racial Profiling, Is It Just? By Reiman. In the original position, it explains a Rawlsian thought experiment with a group of individuals who represent us, who have a veil of ignorance that denies them of a specific identity or situation in society. People with certain traits definitely have certain privileges versus the people who don't, and it kind of touches on that and shows that people are influenced by judgment of emotion, bias, or idiosyncrasy, which they're accustomed to society's voice of values and convinced by right of law. There's a theoretical question that he kind of touches upon and says, would it be rational to choose these societal practices over other possible alternatives when ignorant of where they are in practice? And when you think about that, it just really touches upon racial profiling, and this assumes that some people don't play by rules. And he first asks if it's rational for parties, not knowing who they are in society, to accept racial profiling in a society with crime without racism. Even though it is important to protect against crime, it is also important to hold against certain rights. So that's where it becomes the gray area. distinguishes that parties will recognize profiling increases effectiveness in criminal investigations in everyone's interests, and in a society without racism, you cannot create the racism from the racial profiling. So it is an inconvenience for the people who are innocent that are targeted, the innocent in general grounds and the innocent on the grounds of race, but in this kind of society, it's not, it is more of a good thing rather than a bad thing. In a society with racism, like the US, this may increase discrimination and strengthen the belief of blacks to be inferior to whites and naturally criminalize them. So profiling may increase discrimination, and harm is expressive, which occurs because of the harm because of other events. So the question really is if discrimination of privileges is actually in everyone's interest is different than if everyone is happy with their position in this distribution. So it's clear to say that in a society with racism, it is very hard to look between is it a good thing or like where the line is between profiling, because profiling is effective, but in some cases, but it is not. Sometimes it goes over the line.